Welcome back, folks. Joining us in studio is Senator Kyle Loveless from District 45. Senator Loveless, thank you so much for being here with us in studio. Let's start with this call every year at session. Schools say they don't have enough money. You're actually doing an interim study this year to look at streamlining, modernizing, exploring that question. What kind of considerations are you looking at?
Well, the idea behind it is right now, currently, every tax dollar that we get through Oklahoma, about 50 cents on every dollar, goes towards education. So a lot of times people get this misconception from both Republicans and those in the governor's mansion that we don't have education as a priority, and that's just not true. We do. So my question is, if we're spending that much already on education, and then high school seniors going to OU and OSU, about 40% still have to get remedial classes, we're not getting our money's worth. So I kind of took a backwards approach, and as a business owner, took a business approach to, well, where can we get more money without having to raise taxes, without having to do a radical jar to the system? And how I did that was I came up, and each year that I've been in the legislature, came up with, well, we have 515 school administrators. Well, our neighboring states don't have that. Kansas doesn't have that. Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, they don't have that high of number per district. So I thought, well, we need to reduce that number, and then that way use that money that we're already spending on education and putting it into the classroom, either teacher pay, smart boards, whatever we can do.
So let's stay with this because you're mentioning the savings, and Oklahoma districts spend more on administrative costs than other states. You mentioned that. So, for example, I looked up here on the State of Oklahoma Education website. There's a superintendent of Radon Public Schools that makes $116,000 a year, including benefits, to oversee 124 students. That superintendent basically is paid $936, if my math is correct, compared to $6 per student that the Tulsa Public Schools superintendent is paid. That's the largest district in the state, and he's the highest paid at about $260,000 a year. So in general sense, the numbers are big, but yet then when you apply it, $116,000 for 124 students. I mean, is that where the problem is?
It is a complete. The way that the system is a complete waste of money. And I have to look back as a person that studies history. How did we get here? In 1907, the way that school districts were determined were how far someone could travel on a horse and buggy. Well, in 2014, that is insane. I don't believe that we should have that way. Oklahoma, or the Cleveland County where I live, has 11 school districts. Pottawatomie County, which is next door, has almost double, and with about a fourth of the people. It makes no sense whatsoever the way that the district lines were drawn. So what I want to do is take a systematic approach and look at both growing districts as well as districts that are losing students, and talking to both of them and figuring out, okay, where's the savings? And so I had a bill last session that said if your district had 250 students or less, the HR, IT, and administrative functions had to be absorbed into a neighboring district. I thought when I submitted the legislation, I'm only going to deal with a few districts. I thought I was going to nibble at the edges. It was over 200 school districts have over 250 or less. To me, that makes no sense whatsoever, and to me, we have to redo it. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, there's this question that teachers aren't paid the same that we have in other states, and so schools all the time are saying they have trouble keeping good educators in the classroom. And then at the same time, we also have this issue of how much money is being spent on administration, and so you seem to be introducing this idea that seems to make sense in the business community. Well, if we reduce the administrative cost, we could pay teachers more. So what effect would that be?
When I did my, with legislative staff, the Senate staff, I asked them how much money would, if my bill was passed and enacted into law, yearly, how much would it save? $38 million a year. When you transfer that to teachers and stuff, that would raise the average teacher pay up about $1,800 to $2,000. Per year. Well, guess what? That puts us above Kansas, above Arkansas. It puts us $500 more than New Mexico and makes us tied with Texas. So basically, all this argument of the teachers running to Texas would be wash.
So I'm sitting here thinking, for our viewers at home, the next question that you would hear from a citizen in Oklahoma is, so why aren't we doing this? So let me ask, why didn't your bill pass? Why aren't we doing this?
Part of the issue is Republicans in the past have had a bad reputation and a bad presentation of it. First, every step that I take has always been leave the local communities alone. Leave the rural communities alone. Leave the local high schools alone. Not one single classroom would be closed under my plan. What it would do is it would basically use the dollars that are going to bureaucrats and put them into the teachers' pockets.
So let's move toward results, because you started with that comment, and we hear this all the time at the Capitol. It's always about what's the product that we're getting out of our tax dollars going toward education. Your interim study is looking at results, and there's a whole bunch of issues at the Capitol looking at how do we test for results, or how do we, what are your thoughts on the appropriate way for Oklahoma to be gauging results? Are we doing it effectively right now?
I don't think so. I think that, like I mentioned earlier, that when, it depends on the year, but most years it's between a third and up to 40% have to take remedial math or English or science. I think we're not teaching our children correctly. I think that people in Oklahoma have voted in years past to make sure that our funding stays where it is and not to change it. So we have to think of new outside the box. And I think now's the time. We're at the crossroads of our state where we can either continue going the way we're going, which to me doesn't benefit anyone, or we can change things and we can make it to where students get a better education so that when they go on to college, they'll be ready. And that's another issue where not all students are meant to go to college. We have a great career tech system in this state where you can go for a 2-year certification, graduate, and get an average of $60,000 to $70,000 higher education technical accreditation. And in Oklahoma, $60,000 to $70,000 is pretty good money.
Senator Loveless, thank you so much for being here with us and talking through these issues. Folks, we're going to be right back talking more about education in Oklahoma and finding some solutions to challenges that you posed on the Facebook page. Welcome back, folks. Still in studio is Senator Kyle Loveless from District 45 in Oklahoma. We're talking about all of the funding that goes into education and how are those dollars used, and some of the concerns we hear from parents and citizens. And let's go through this topic a little bit more, where you were talking about the size of administration. And can we put that into comparison for folks? How many school districts do we have, and how does that compare to other states?
Well, last year and previous years, we've always heard we got to have our teacher pay up to the regional average. Well, what I would like to do is flip that. I would like to get our administrators on the regional average. And for example, Arkansas 10 years ago had 600 school districts. Now they have 239. Kansas has 300. Louisiana, which has more population than us, has 70 administrators. New Mexico has 96, and Alaska, of all, has 54. So it's just, having the overhead really keeps the dollars from getting to where it's supposed to be. And that's part of what I want to do, is take some of that money that's being spent, I think, inappropriately or overindulgently, and put it to where it needs to be.
Yeah, I remember former Florida Governor Jeb Bush was here a couple years ago with Governor Fallon talking about the Race to the Top challenge and how Florida had springboarded and moved up. And he said, we have a larger student population than you have a state population, and we have less school districts than you have counties. And he said, so more of our dollars are going into the classroom and touching the student, where more of your dollars are stuck outside of the classroom. Now, parents sitting at home right now are probably enraged about this when they hear that, well, we could do something about this tomorrow. So what do you see as the steps? What do you expect to happen this year at session?
Well, the first thing this interim study I hope to do, that accomplished in the next couple of weeks, is look at the system from all perspectives, from a small school perspective to a big school, and then also getting someone from outside the state to come in and say, okay, here's where you can improve, here's where you can streamline, here's where you can modernize, and keep that money, earmark it for education, because it's going to be spent for education, and use it properly. And I think that way, out of the interim study, we get some legislative bullet points or whatever to use for proposed legislation, and then introduce that in the spring.
So access to quality education for low-income students in rural communities, but Oklahoma City and Tulsa, this comes up every year. It's kind of a subtopic. In addition to what you're studying, what have you heard out there that are good solutions, or what do you think Oklahoma could be looking for?
In my opinion, I've always believed that the free economy works, competition works. I've done charter school legislation before in the past, and I will continue to do so. I truly believe that I don't believe that Oklahoma County and Tulsa County should be the only place where charter schools are allowed to happen. They should happen all throughout the state. I had legislation for the Native American tribes to do it, and because in the rural areas you have to have a corporate buy-in. community buy-in. It doesn't have to be Native American tribes, but it could be any corporation. You're telling me that Ponca City or Enid couldn't have a petroleum engineering type of high school? Of course they could. Or an agricultural school, themed school in Stillwater. All of that could happen. To me, a 8-year plan or a big picture plan is what we need, and this is what I can hope to accomplish.
So, last question, and I'm always fascinated by this, but for folks that maybe aren't in the political process every day, in addition to lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, you've got interest groups, the teachers union, superintendents, everything to deal with. It's an uphill battle for anything. What makes you passionate about education? Why are you taking on this issue?
Well, the thing that makes me passionate about this issue, which I've had people tell me that this is the third rail of Oklahoma politics, and so I said, you know what, if a Republican from my district, South Oklahoma City and Mustang, can't get this through, then nobody can. And so what really I want to do is provide the best education for those that have to use public education. My daughter started kindergarten this year, and in the more public school system.
Sure.
And I want her to have the best opportunities, whether it's charter school, whatever she wants to do. I want her to be able to do it when she graduates high school. Whether she wants to go to VOTEC or wants to go on to college, she can do so. And I'm afraid that this next generation, we won't be able to do that. And that's why I think making the best options available and getting the best bang for our buck, education-wise, is the best course of action.
Senator Loveless, thank you so much for
Thanks
being here
again for having
today.
me.
Good luck this year at the Capitol.